All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us this Friday afternoon. I'm Amy Cannon. I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works and Transportation, and I will be giving the presentation this afternoon about the 2021 annual RFQ about the Parks, Water Utilities, and Public Works and Transportation RFQ that has just been released. We will have questions from the relevant departments. We have members of each department here. Reginald Cleveland, who represents our MWBE group, is also here to answer any questions that you'll have about MWBE. We have Jesse Stein from the Water Utilities Department, Scott Fairman, and then we have multiple members from the Public Works and Transportation Department to answer questions about the categories. Before we get started, if you're just joining us and you have not done so already, please enter your name and your firm name into the chat so that we can log you in and have that act as a sign-in sheet. So without further delay, let's get started. So we do an annual RFQ every year as a way to basically merge our efforts together in the capital improvements programs for the Public Works and Transportation, Water Utilities, and Parks Department. All of our budgets are actually approved at the same time. And we use this process as a way to be fair and transparent in our selection process for engineering consultants. To access where our capital improvements programs are between the three groups, you can actually access that through our council meeting minutes. That's on the City of Arlington website, which is arlingtontx.gov. Visit the City Council page, meetings and minutes, and then you can check out the agenda from March 17th, 2020. Which is when our capital budgets for the 2020 year were approved, and they actually include the information for what we are forecasting for our needs in 2021. Yes, next slide. So we do the capital program this way. It's approved by ordinance, and the approval occurs every spring, typically around March. You need to look, when you look at the council agenda, at the resolution attachments for the projects related to facilities, parks, and streets. Those are all approved in one resolution, and then stormwater and water utilities as enterprise funds, they are actually approved in two separate resolutions. So you will need to look at three separate attachments to see what projects are listed for year 2021. Next slide, please. So when you look at it, this is a screenshot of actually how our budget looks when you get into those resolutions. Is the funding is typically broken down into the phases. So the first year is typically the study, the second is the design, the third is the right-of-way, and the fourth is construction. And so you will see that on our 5-year plans, and so you can reference that, and you can typically see where our study and design sections are within those first 2 years. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned before, the schedule to submit will be October 30th at 4:30 p.m. You will need to submit them to the three relevant groups, which is Public Works and Transportation. You will address them to me. Water Utilities is addressed to Jesse Stein, and then Parks is to Scott Fairman. Please note that Parks is actually located away from City Hall, and so you will need to send your submittal to a different address than from what Public Works and Water Utilities is at. Next slide. So please be aware that when you make your submittal, that we will need hard copies only, that you will need to include a cover letter, and most importantly, you will need to include the appropriate consultant contact sheet. In previous years, we've had some issues with folks submitting, say, like the Parks consultant contact sheet within the Public Works submittal. We actually need to make sure that when y'all do submit, that the Public Works contact sheet is with the Public Works submittal, the Parks is with the Parks, and then the Water Utilities is with the Water Utilities. Those sheets are very important for us because it actually helps us sort all the submittals out and get them to the appropriate review teams. Not following directions on this step can lead to immediate disqualification. Next slide. So each department has its own individual project categories, and they are subject to change based upon our available budget that it will be approved sometime, and we're expecting in March of 2021. When you look at our RFQ, if it has on-call, that generally means that we are selecting at least one consultant to include in the pool, but we don't have a specific number of projects in the category at the time. We usually do that in case there's a disaster or something and we need immediate engineering support. So those are the reasons that we have on-call contracts. Selection is not a guarantee of receiving a contract. Next slide. So these project categories that we have on this slide are the only ones that we have for the year. So parks has park improvements and renovations, roadway parking and drainage, linear park trail development. Water utilities just has water treatment, miscellaneous structural engineering support, water treatment, miscellaneous electrical engineering support. And then the Public Works and Transportation Department has roadway collector arterial, residential rebuild, sidewalk, intersection improvements, traffic engineering, structural engineering, drainage design, drainage analysis, erosion design, drainage technical review, dredging and permits, and then our newest category is surveying services. Next slide. So team organization is a very critical component of what we are looking at when we do review these RFQ submittals. We expect the teams listed in your SOQ to be the team to do the project. Team organization and the project experience are a major component of how we select shortlist consultants. It really should be more than just a PM and demonstrate that you have the ability to do the project. And we also don't want to see in the team organization that you're going to just use an MWBE sub. If you're going to use a sub or an MWBE sub, we want to know at this stage that you have an established working relationship with them, and we just don't want a placeholder. We want actual people to understand who is doing what on each project. Next slide. For the project experience, we do want one sheet per project example. Especially if the project resulted in construction plans. The plan sheet is our way to see how clear and concise your designs are. And please make sure that the person who sealed the example sheet that you're submitting is on the project team. And make sure that it's relevant to the actual category that you are submitting for. For instance, we do not want to see a traffic control plan sheet in a storm drain design experience summary. That's not relevant to storm drain design, even though it is part of the construction process. We want to see what can you do with the storm drain, not necessarily what you can do with the traffic control plan, and that counts for all of the categories in all three RFQs. Next slide. So the evaluation committees will include representation from multiple departments. This is not just Public Works, Water Utilities, and Parks. This will also include members from Planning and Development, the Office of Strategic Initiatives, and our MWBE team to make sure that we have multiple viewpoints when we evaluate these SOQs. Submittals are scored based on a predetermined criteria. Evaluations will happen in late 2020. We usually begin the first week that we have received y'all's SOQs, and then the selections will go through the rest of the year and be announced sometime in early 2021. The 2021 consultants list will be posted on IonWave, so if you do not have an account with IonWave yet, please register. If you need assistance with that, please reach out to us. Once again, selection is not a guarantee of the contract, and questions are always welcome during this process, but lobbying efforts will result in immediate disqualification. Next slide. And with that, I will turn this over to Reginald Cleveland to present on the MWBE program. Okay, we're having some technical difficulties getting Reginald connected, so I'll go ahead and present the contents of this slide. So the city has an overall 25% MWBE participation goal. Team makeup will be part of the evaluation criteria. MWBE subcontracting plan identifying all subcontractors, subconsultants participating on the project team should be included with your proposal. Include the names of all subconsultants, including MWBE firms, on your past projects. Prime sub and MWBE reports should be submitted to the user department and MWBE coordinator after contract negotiations. Monthly payment breakdown reports should be included with each invoice showing payments to all subconsultants. So that will be part of the process after we are selected, or after we have done our selections and negotiated the contract with you. Next slide, please. So we cannot stress enough for y'all to be familiar with the contract that we have attached with the RFQ. We have those are the terms of how we're going to negotiate with you. Read the attached contracts before submitting, and we cannot emphasize enough having team continuity when you get to the negotiation stages. We do not want to see the team drastically change once we have shortlisted y'all. Next slide. So our common pitfalls that we see is not following instructions. These are really the impressions that you get to make to us to show that your QA/QC process is sound, and when you don't submit these SOQs without grammatical errors or spelling errors, it does not necessarily lead to the best impression. Not being clear on team member roles for each project category are also a big item. We've had several submittals in recent years where it seems like everyone was all doing everything, and it was an amazing experience for everyone and they were great, but it really didn't tell us really what went into design, what the challenges were for the site that they were working on, and who was doing what on which part of the project. It is common that we see as an example, it is common that we see like the roadway design team is just copied onto the sidewalk category. We would recommend that the sidewalk needs to be the highlight of the project, not the secondary part. So be sure that when you're submitting information for the category, that it is relevant to the category. It should be the main feature and not the secondary part of the project experience that you're listing. Poor work history, including development submittals, are documented. Submitting irrelevant plan sheets and not sealing plan sheets and submitting plan sheets with lots of revisions do not leave a good impression. We have received some where the entire sheet was covered in revision clouds, and we all know that sometimes stuff happens when you get to construction, but being that we don't have the full context of everything that happened during the project, it's not good to submit us a bunch of revisions on the sheet. And please also be sure that if you're submitting a sheet that is sealed by someone, that is sealed by a person on the team. Commonly, we have seen people submit project sheets, but that person is either no longer with the firm and is not listed on the project team. We do look at those levels of detail to see, is the person who was the lead on this project actually still on the project team? So please pay attention to those details when you are submitting for the SOQ. And excessive marketing material and not being concise is generally viewed negatively. So please be sure that we focus on the work that you do and explaining to us clearly what the project was. Next slide, please. What will really help to set you apart is the effort to match your proposed team organization and experience to the specific project category. We want to see that you're not just copying and pasting the teams to each category. We have seen that in several RFQ rounds is the same teams are applied for every single one of our categories. And we want to see that you put some thought on what you're submitting for, and then who is basically going to be on the team. You know, someone that may be very good at roadway design may not be the best at structural engineering or stormwater design. So we want to make sure that you're not just copying and pasting, but that you're finding the right people to work on our projects. We want you to tailor your examples to the types of CIP projects that we have identified in those budgets. Giving value-added examples of difficult situations or innovative approaches is critical, because we want, as nearly a fully developed city, we are pretty much working in very tight spaces almost all the time. And so we want to make sure that, you know, y'all have faced the same challenges. For roadway projects, a lot of them are actually adding roadway into a fully urbanized area. We're not dealing with a lot of rural situations, and so keep that in mind. Showing your team has specialized experience that we need for that category is critical. And then also including your previous work history. And so with that, we will, next slide, please. We will start the questions. So if you have a question, please enter it into the chat, and then we will call on and get the appropriate staff person to answer it. Okay, while we are waiting for some more questions to come in, we are going to go ahead and share with you some answers or some questions that we have already received, as well as the answers. We will be posting these in response to the questions as we have normally planned. So the first question came to us, to all three departments, is: are you accepting qualifications for individual disciplines such as geotechnical engineering and construction materials testing? No, we are only accepting for the categories that we have posted. Geotechnical engineering is typically included within our design contracts, and then the construction materials testing is a separate process. So those are separate contracts that is separate from this RFQ. So geotechnical engineering is not a category, and neither is construction materials testing. One question was, if we have a project at 95% design, can we still use it as a project example with a preliminary seal on the plan sheet instead of final signed and sealed? Submitted plans must be signed and sealed. It is your choice if you want to seal a partially complete plan sheet for the submittal with the statement that the plans are preliminary and not for construction. Does this RFQ and any of the project categories include, I'm sorry, we've already answered that. What is Arlington firm referring to? Is it asking if firm's office is located in Arlington or already on the city's approved vendors list? Arlington firm refers to a firm with an office that is located in Arlington. Does the monthly payment breakdown attachment need to be included, filled out with the submittal? No, the form is used for reporting after a firm is under contract. Is an electronic digital signature on the form acceptable? Yes, it is. Are subconsultants' MWBE certifications required with the MWBE forms that is to be included with the response to the RFQ? No, these certificates do not need to be supplied unless your firm is the selected firm, is used for reporting after a firm is under contract. In addition to the MWBE forms, are additional attachments with further firm information allowed? For example, one-page resumes, additional project examples, etc. Information about subconsultants should be included in the project team organization and experience sections. No additional resumes, project examples, or other firm information are allowed beyond the allowable pages listed in the RFQ document. The project experience requirements state: 1, signed, sealed 11x17 plan sheet if project included preparation of construction plans. Are 11x17 plan sheets only required for design services and not Category 12 professional surveying services? If an 11 by 17 is required for surveying services, is a signed and sealed easement sheet acceptable? That is correct. A plan sheet is not required for surveying services category. For category 11, drainage special services, can you specify what kind of grants could be included as part of on-call services? In the past, the city has utilized FEMA, TWDB, and HUD grants to help fund projects. For the project experience, is an 11 by 17 signed and sealed sheet required for each project that included preparation of construction plans? Yes. Okay. I'm sorry, we were reading through the questions in the chat, making sure if we wanted to go ahead and call them out. We have received one related to water utilities. It says, I received the 2021 RFQ and the notice for the virtual meeting on October 9th. Page 4 of the RFQ lists on-call structural and electrical support as the only two categories of work for the water utilities department. Could you verify whether these are the only two categories of professional services for which qualifications are being sought for 2021? Water utilities is only accepting proposals for the two categories listed. There have been a lot of questions related to whether or not the Arlington firms are, I guess, giving additional points. We're just summarizing a lot of the questions that we're seeing on our end. It doesn't, it's for tracking purposes for us, but it doesn't weigh in significantly into our decisions. Okay, there was a question that says that you mentioned needing to submit to all three. If we are only pursuing categories under Public Works, then do we need to submit to Parks and Utilities? No, you do not. If your category or categories that you're submitting for are in just one department, then you will submit to them and you do not need to submit for all three RFQs. Okay, everyone, all questions are going to be due by October 16th. So if you think of a question after this meeting is adjourned, then please feel free to submit those to the relevant department contacts that are listed in the notice. Questions and responses all questions and responses, including the ones that are listed in the chat from this meeting, will be posted October 23rd. And then proposals are due October 30th by 4:30 p.m.
Good afternoon. This is Reginald Cleveland, MWBE Coordinator. And one of the questions was, is the prime DBE or MWBE status that is part of the city's DBE/MWBE goal? Answer is, it will be part of it. It should not be the whole, but it will be included. The question is asked, is a service-disabled veteran-owned business counted toward the city's MWBE program? And I'm going to answer no. One of the questions asked is, as a MWBE who is planning to submit as a prime, do that firm need to also include subcontracting, MWBE subcontractors? And the answer is yes. All firms submitting as primes are considered as prime, and we need to make an effort to. But also remember that the MWBE primes participation will be included as part of the goal, not as a whole, but as part of the goal. The question is asked, can DBE certification be counted toward the city's MWBE program? And the answer is yes.
Okay, y'all, if we haven't gotten to your question yet, we will respond to them in our Q&A response. So if y'all would like, there's no further additional information for this presentation. If y'all would like to go ahead and adjourn, y'all can go ahead and do so. We're going to hang on a little bit. That way, if y'all do have some questions that y'all want to post in our chat, that the chat is on and that we do receive those. Thank you very much for joining us on a Friday afternoon. I hope y'all all have a good weekend, and I hope this time next year that we are all able to see y'all in person. So thank you for joining us.
The question is asked, will a TxDOT certified hub firm count toward the city's MWBE program? And the answer is one of the question is that came up is the 25% MWBE requirement per category? And the answer is yes. We want to make a good faith effort on all categories of work. Understand that some areas are more self-performing than others, but nevertheless, again, 25% is a goal, good faith effort.
This is Sidney Kelly with the Public Works Stormwater Division. There's a question that came in. Are the grants associated with Category 11 drainage special services only related to dredging, or does it include flood mitigation / planning grants also? This also includes flood mitigation and planning grants also. Thank you.
This is Jessie Stein with the Water Utilities Department. We've received numerous questions regarding our categories related to water and sanitary sewer pipelines. The only categories the Water Utilities Department is accepting are those listed in the RFQ. We are not accepting proposals for water or sanitary sewer lines.
All right, it is 2:15 and we are going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you for joining us. And like I mentioned before, we hope that we can see you in person next year. Thank you.